Alexandria, a Hellenistic World podcast. Episode 4b, the Derveni Papyrus. Back in 1962, archaeologists at the necropolis of ancient Lete, modern Derveni, near the city of Thessaloniki in Macedonia, found some tombs. The first tomb they labeled Tomb A, and it was chock full of fantastic grave goods. Once they dug through the ash layer on top, they found a gold wreath, bronze vases, and iron spearheads, the grave goods of a warrior from the time of Philip II and Alexander. The ashes of the warrior himself were held in a bronze crater, a vessel reserved in life for mixing wine at parties, but often used to house the dead as well. Tomb A was not alone. Nearby, Tomb B housed even more treasures, the largest and wealthiest of all the tombs at Lete. Tomb B contained two people, a man and a woman, whose cremated remains were housed together in the beautiful bronze Derveni crater, as described last episode. The couple in Tomb B took with them a gold wreath, jewelry, various vessels and vases, weapons, armor, a lidded case with medical tools, a gold coin of Philip II, and, my favorite of all, a folding board game set with glass game pieces. Now, the elite guys in Tomb A and B probably died in the last quarter of the 4th century BCE, so sometime between 325 and 300. But their grave goods almost all date to the early or mid-4th century, exactly the time period we're covering right now. That includes the subject of today's episode, because unusually, the archaeologists found something else in Tomb A. Before they got down to the grave goods themselves, they had to dig through a thick layer of ashes from the cremation pyre over top the tomb proper. In those ashes, they found a papyrus scroll. It turns out, when this warrior was cremated, the mourners responsible for his funeral placed the man's favorite writings beside him, burning it on his pyre for him to take to the afterlife. But in the pyre, the papyrus scroll carbonized. For over 2,000 years, in the humid Greek soil, the carbonized papyrus survived. And now we have it, the oldest known manuscript ever found in Europe. That's what we're reading today, the Derveni Papyrus, an esoteric, philosophical treatise about the birth of the gods, the creation of mankind, and life after death. The beliefs professed in this text reflect the practices of the elites living in this area of Macedon around 340 BCE, when the papyrus itself was probably written. The beliefs of Orphism, as compared to typical Greek religion, are a little wild. So to understand the readings today, let's briefly review the Orphic account of the creation of the world and of humans. According to the poems preserved in this treatise, the universe was first ruled by Ouranos, the sky, and then by Cronus, who was dethroned by one of his sons, Zeus. Okay, so far, pretty normal for Greek mythology. But then, things get weird. First, Zeus swallows the phallus of the first creator of the universe, the sky, Ouranos, to become pregnant and give birth to the entire cosmos anew, making it rational and orderly according to his own wishes. In this new ordered universe, Zeus decides to make sure he isn't overthrown like his father. So first, he has sex with his mother, Rhea, identified in this text as Demeter, who then begets her daughter Persephone. Zeus then has sex with his daughter, who then begets Dionysus. So Dionysus is Zeus's son, but also his grandson, and he's Persephone's son, but also her stepbrother. Okay, that's not normal Greek myth. But it gets weirder. Zeus yields his throne to his child son Dionysus, so the Titans, the generation before Zeus, who had recently been dethroned, trick the child, dismember him, and eat him. Athena manages to save the child's heart, which Zeus then mixes into a drink and gives to a mortal woman, Semele. Semele drinks, conceives the child Dionysus, gets struck by lightning, and finally Zeus extracts the fetus from her womb and puts it into his thigh. Now that last part is in Ovid, so it's not entirely unheard of, but how we got here was very unusual. Now to finish off the creation story, Zeus births Dionysus from his thigh and simultaneously destroys the wretched Titans with lightning. The Titans' ashes mix with the earth, and through this mixture of Dionysus, Titan, and earth, human beings are created. Thus, humans consist of an earthly body, which houses a dual divine soul. The divine soul has a positive aspect from Dionysus and a negative aspect from the Titans. Okay, what all that means for the average Macedonian nobleman is that the human soul is divine, but contaminated, and it must continually reincarnate into a physical body, which is itself like a tomb. The soul is never truly alive until it is freed from the body. So, how do we do this? If you just die, you'll be reincarnated. So instead, you need to be initiated into the Dionysiac mysteries, of course, and be purified, and thence lead a pure, unadulterated life with all the proper rituals. And that is what this text, the Derveni Papyrus, is about. Firstly, the Dionysian mysteries, and secondly, the story of the creation of the gods and humans as conveyed to us through the poetry of the legendary Thracian poet Orpheus. Now, the text is fragmentary, especially at the beginning and end, because the bottom half of the papyrus scroll was burned away like normal. But the middle sections are spectacularly preserved. That means today we're starting somewhere in the middle of the original treatise. The first section we have deals with some sort of ritual, perhaps an Orphic initiation rite. The writer is trying to explain the ritual from a philosophical viewpoint, conforming it to his scientific understanding. So, before we begin, a few terms that this 4th century aristocrat would know. Remember that Heraclitus was a philosopher living in Ephesus on the west coast of modern Turkey around 500 BCE. The Erinyes and the Eumenides are the same figures usually called the Furies, and the Magi are Persian Zoroastrian priests. Now, with that in mind, imagine you are a 4th century Macedonian nobleman, perhaps terrified by death and oblivion, and seeking knowledge on how best to secure a happy afterlife. The Derveni Papyrus. Selections from columns 4 through 6. Column 4. Something something. He, the god, having displaced what was established, something something, to hand over, rather, what causes damage, for something something. For he, the god, did not allow the world to admit the workings of chance. Is not the world that is created by him ordered? In conformity with this, Heraclitus, invoking the testimony of what is shared in common by all men, overturns what belongs to each individual. He who, saying things similar to a holy discourse, said, quote, "The sun," in accordance with the nature of the world, quote, is of the breadth of a human foot, unquote, not exceeding that size. For if it exceeds at all its own limits, quote, the Erinyes will find it out, unquote. He made this supposition in order that it not make its breadth excessive, something, something. Column 5. Something, something. They consult an oracle, something, something. For them, we enter into the oracular shrine in order to ask, for the sake of those who are consulting the oracle, if it is lawful to expect terrors in Hades. Why do they disbelieve? Not understanding dreams or each of the other real things, how could they believe on the basis of other examples? For, overcome by error and by something else, pleasure, they do not learn nor do they believe. Disbelief and lack of learning are the same thing. For if they do not learn and do not understand, it is not possible that they will believe something, something. Column 6. Something, something. Prayers and sacrifices placate the souls, and the incantation of the Magi is capable of transforming the deities, daimones, when they are a hindrance. They, these daimones, are a hindrance as avenging souls. It is for this reason that the Magi perform a sacrifice, as though they were paying a penalty, and upon the sacrificial offerings they pour water and milk, out of which things they also make the libations. Numberless and many-knobbed are the cakes they sacrifice, because the souls too are numberless. The initiates perform a preliminary sacrifice to the Eumenides, in the same way as the Magi do. For the Eumenides are souls, because of which he who wants to perform sacrificial offerings for the gods first takes a small bird, something, something. The second, longer section is a commentary on esoteric poems ascribed to the divine Thracian poet Orpheus himself, but probably composed in about 500 BCE. The poems describe that crazy creation story of gods and humans that I summarized above, but the commentator in this text again tries to explain the poems from his perspective as a scientific philosopher. So, about halfway through, you'll hear about all things striking each other. This might refer to the ancient idea of atomism as described by the philosopher Democritus. It might also combine the concept from the philosopher Heraclitus of flux, in which the whole world is constantly moving, becoming, and flowing, but never static. Thus, the common phrase coined by Heraclitus that no man ever steps in the same river twice. And likewise, remember what the young Macedonian noble at the symposium said in our previous episode. To his understanding, the Persian Zoroastrian priests believe that fire is the beginning of all things, the arche. And in Greek, to begin, archein, is the same word as to be first, and therefore to rule or command. While you listen, imagine again that you are that 4th century Macedonian nobleman, getting older, preparing for your death. The Derveni Papyrus, columns 7 through 26. Column 7. Something, something. a hymn that says sound and lawful things. For he was performing a sacred rite by means of his poem, and it is not possible to state the meaning imposed on the words even though they are uttered. But the poem is an alien one, and for human beings, riddling, even if Orpheus himself intended by means of it to say not undeterminable riddles, but rather great things in the form of riddles. Indeed, he is making a holy discourse, and from the first word continuously until his last one, as he makes clear in this well-chosen verse 2. For he who has ordered them, quote, put doors to your ears, unquote, says that he is not legislating for the many, but for those who are pure in their hearing, something, something. Column 8. Something, something. He has made it clear in this verse, quote, who were born from Zeus, the mighty king, unquote. And how he begins, he makes clear in this one, quote, Zeus, when from his father the prophesied rule, arcane, and strength, alcane, in his hands he received, and the glorious divinity, unquote. People do not notice that these words are transposed, but they are as follows, quote, Zeus on the one hand, when he received from his father the strength and the glorious divinity, unquote. If this is so, it is necessary to understand not that Zeus overpowers his father, but rather that he receives his strength from him. But if it were otherwise, he would seem to receive the rule in violation of the prophecies. For it seems that for him, something, something. Column 9. Something, something. Therefore, he made the rule, arche, belong to what is the strongest, just as a son belongs to his father. But those who do not understand what is said think that Zeus received from his own father the strength and the divinity. Therefore, knowing that fire, if it is mixed with the other things, disturbs the things that exist and prevents them from becoming constituted on account of its heating, he sets it at a distance far enough that, once it has been set at a distance, it does not prevent the things that exist from solidifying. But whatever is kindled is dominated by fire, and being dominated, it is mixed with the other things. As for, quote, he received in his hands, unquote, he expressed this in a riddling way, just like the other expressions, which at first seem obscure, but seem quite certain once they have been thought about. Therefore, expressing himself in a riddling way, he says that Zeus forcefully received the strength and the divinity, something, something. Column 10. Something, something, and to say. For to say, without uttering, is not possible either. And he thought that to say and to utter were the same thing. But to say and to teach have the same meaning, for it is not possible to teach without saying whatever is taught by means of words, and teaching is thought to consist in saying. Therefore, teaching is not separated from saying, nor saying from uttering, but to utter, to say, and to teach have the same meaning. Thus, nothing prevents all pronouncing and teaching all things from being the same thing. And in calling the night nurse, he shows in a riddling way that everything that the sun heats and dissolves, the night reunites by cooling everything that the sun was heating. Something, something. Column 11. Something, something of night. He says that, quote, she proclaims the oracle out of the innermost shrine, unquote. His view being that the innermost shrine is the depth of night, for the night does not set as the light does, but the daylight seizes it while it remains in the same place. And to proclaim an oracle and to prevent harm have the same meaning, and we must consider what to prevent harm and to proclaim an oracle refer to. It is in this belief that this god proclaims oracles that they come to find out what they should do. This is what he says after this verse. Quote, "Night proclaimed an oracle about all that was right for him to perform." Unquote. Column 12. Something, something, and to remove it. The next verse goes like this. Quote, "That he might reign on the lovely seat of snow-capped Olympus." Unquote. Olympus and time are the same thing. Those that think that Olympus and heaven are the same thing are completely wrong, for they do not understand that heaven cannot be long rather than wide, whereas if someone were calling time long, he would not be wrong at all. Whenever he wanted to say heaven, he added the epithet wide, but whenever he wanted to say Olympus, on the contrary, he never added wide but long. And in saying that it is snow-clad, he was comparing time in its property with a snowy mountain. What is snowy is cold and white, something, something. Column 13. Quote, "When Zeus, having heard the prophecies from his father," unquote. For neither was it at that time that he heard, but it has been made clear in what sense he heard, nor does night command. But he makes this clear, saying as follows, quote, "He swallowed down the phallus, the first to have ejaculated the ether," unquote. Because he speaks in a riddling way about real things during the whole poem, it is necessary to speak about each word in turn. Since he saw that men consider generation to be dependent upon the genitals, and that this does not happen without the genitals, he used this word, comparing the sun to the genitals. For without the sun, it would not have been possible for the things that exist to be generated, something, something. Column 14. Something, something. The fire ejaculated what is brightest and hottest, the ether separated from itself. Therefore, he says that this Cronus was born to earth from the sun, because he was the cause via the sun that all things strike against one another. That is why he says, quote, "He who did a great deed," unquote. And the verse after this, quote, "Oranos, son of Euphrone," aka night, "who was the first of all to rule," unquote. Having called Cronus mind that makes things strike against each other, the poet says that he, Cronus, did a great deed to Oranos. For he says that he, Oranos, was deprived of his kingship. And he called him Cronus from his action, and all the other things according to the same principle. For when all the things that exist were not yet striking against one another, mind, since it delimits nature, received the name Oranos. And he says that he was, quote, "was deprived of his kingship." Stop, 1, 2, 3. Start, 1, 2, 3. And he says that he, quote, "was deprived of his kingship," unquote, while the things that exist were striking against one another, something, something. Column 15. Something, something. To strike against one another, even if he made the sun, having been separated, hold the things that exist at a distance from one another. For when the sun is separated and is confined in the middle, he, the mind, fastens and maintains both what is above the sun and what is below it. And the next verse, quote, "From him in turn came Cronus and then prudent Zeus," unquote. He, Orpheus, says that the beginning, arche, dates from the time when Zeus is king. And the beginning of the verse, he explains that he, the mind, by making the things that exist strike against one another and by holding them apart, made the current reconfiguration, making not different things out of different ones, but different things out of the same ones. As for then prudent Zeus, it is clear that this is not a different one, but the same one. Column 16. Something something. It has been made clear that he said that the sun is phallus. And he says that the things that are now come to be from the things that exist. Quote, of the firstborn king, the phallus, and upon him all the immortals grew, blessed gods and goddesses, and rivers and lovely springs, and everything else that was born then, and he himself was alone. Unquote. In these verses, he indicates that the things that are have always existed, and the things that are now come to be out of the things that exist. As for, and he himself was alone, in saying that he makes... As for, and he himself was alone, in saying this, he makes clear that mind itself, being alone, is always worth everything, as if everything else were nothing. For it is not possible for the things that are now to exist by themselves without mind. And in the verse following this one, he has said that mind is worth everything. Quote, he is now the king of all things and will be later. Unquote. It is clear that mind and the king of all things are the same thing. Column 17. Something something. It existed before it was named, and it was named later. For air existed both before the things that are now were assembled, and it will always exist. For it was not born, but it existed. The reason why it is called air was made clear in what preceded, but it was thought that it was born because it was named Zeus, as if it did not exist previously. And he said that this one would be the last because it was named Zeus. And this will continue to be its name until the things that are now have been assembled into the same form in which they were floating when they existed previously. And he shows that the things that exist become such as they are because of him, and that once they have come about, they are all once again in him. He indicates it in the following verses. Quote, Zeus is the head, Zeus the middle, and by Zeus all things are made. Unquote. Column 18. Something something, and the things that move downward. And by saying destiny, Moira, he shows that this earth and all the other things are in the air, which is breath. This breath, therefore, Orpheus named it Moira, but all other men, according to common usage, say Moira has spun for them, or these things will be whatever Moira has spun. Speaking correctly, but not knowing either what Moira is or what spinning is. For it is wisdom that Orpheus called Moira, for this seemed to him to be the most suitable out of the names that all men have given. For before he, Zeus, was called Zeus, Moira was the wisdom of the god, always and everywhere. But since he has been called Zeus, they think that he was born, although he existed before but did not have a name. This is why he says, quote, Zeus was born first, unquote. For at first Moira was wisdom, but then she became consecrated as being Zeus. But people, not understanding what is said, think that Zeus is the firstborn god, something something. Column 19. Something something. Ever since each single thing that exists has received its name from what dominates, all things have been called Zeus according to the same principle. For the air dominates all things as much as it wishes. And when they say Moira has spun, they are saying that the wisdom of Zeus ratifies how the things that are, the things that become, and the things that will be must come to be, exist, and cease. And he compares him to a king, for out of the names that are said, This one seemed to him to be suitable when he says the following, quote, Zeus the king, Zeus the ruler of all, god of the bright bolt, unquote. He said that he is king because, although there are many magistracies, there is one that governs all of them and accomplishes everything that is not permitted to any other mortal to accomplish, something something. He said that he was the ruler of all because all things are ruled by something something. Column 20. Something something. Those men who, having performed holy rites in the cities, have seen the sacred objects, I am less astonished that they do not understand. For it is not possible to hear and at the same time to understand what is being said. But all those who hope to acquire knowledge from an expert in holy rites, they deserve that people feel astonishment and pity for them. Astonishment because, thinking before they perform the rites that they will know, they go away after having performed them before they know and without asking further questions, as though they knew something of what they had seen or heard or learned. And pity, because it is not enough that they have spent their money in advance, but also they go off thwarted of their intention as well, since hoping before they perform the holy rites that they will know, they go away after they have performed them, having been thwarted of this hope too. Column 21. Something something, nor the cold to the cold. But when he says, by leaping, he shows that, divided into little pieces, they, the particles, were moving in the air and were leaping. And by leaping, each of them was put into mutual relation with the other ones. And they went on leaping until each one came to its fellow. Heavenly Aphrodite and Zeus, to engage in the works of Aphrodite, and to leap, and persuasion, and harmony, these are all names established for the same god. A man who mixes sexually with a woman is said by common usage to engage in the works of Aphrodite. For she received the name Aphrodite when the things that exist now were mixed with one another. And persuasion received her name because the things that existed yielded to one another, and yield and persuade are the same. And harmony received her name because she fitted together, hermose, many of the things that exist to each one among them. For they existed before too, but the term being born was used for them after they had been separated. Column 22. So he named all things in the same way, as best as he could, knowing the nature of men, that not all of them have a similar nature, nor do all want the same things. When they have power, they say anything that occurs to each one's mind, whatever they happen to want, never the same things, through greed, sometimes also through ignorance. Earth and Mother and Rhea and Hera are one and the same. Earth, Ge, was given as a name by convention. Mother because all things are born from her. Ge and Gaia according to each one's dialect. She was named Demeter, just like Ge Mater, Earth Mother. One name made out of both of them, for they were the same. And it is said in the hymns too. Quote, Demeter Rhea Ge Mater Hestea Deo. Unquote. For she is called Deo too because she was split apart, a Deothe, during the mixture. He will show this when in his verses she is born. She is called Rhea because many animals of all kinds were born by flowing out of her. Rhea and Rhea according to each one's dialect. And she was called Here because something something. Column 23. This verse has been composed in such a way as to be misleading, and it is unclear to the many. But to those who understand correctly, it is quite clear that ocean is the air, and that the air is Zeus. It is not the case that one Zeus devised another Zeus, but instead the same one devised for himself great strength. But those who do not understand think that ocean is a river because he added, quote, broadly flowing, unquote. But he indicates his thought in current and customary expressions, for they say that those who are very powerful among men have flowed great. In the next verse, quote, he placed in it the sinews of silver eddying Achelous, unquote. He attributes the name Achelous to water in general, and his placing the sinews in it is his having pushed these down something something. Column 24. Something something. They, those that are equal-limbed, are equal, measured from the center. But it is not possible that all those that are not circular be equal-limbed. This is what this verse shows. Quote, she who shines for many mortals upon the boundless earth, unquote. Someone might think that this verse is said in a different sense, namely that if she is at her maximum, the things that exist come to appear more than before she is at her maximum. But he does not say this, namely that she shines. For if this were what he was saying, he would have said that she shines not for many, but rather for all, both for those who work the land and for those who sail, when it is necessary that they sail at the right season. For if there were no moon, men would not have discovered the number either of the seasons or of the winds, something something. Column 25. Something something and brightness. But the things out of which the moon is composed, being divided according to the same principle, are the most luminous of all, but they are not hot. And there are now, too, other things floating in the air far from one another. But during the day they are invisible, since they are dominated by the sun. But during the night it is visible that they exist. They are dominated because of their smallness. Each of them floats by necessity, so as not to be united with one another. For otherwise there would have been united in a single mass all the things that have the same property, and of which the sun is composed. If the god had not wished the things that exist now to exist, he would not have made the sun. But he made it of such a sort and of such a size as he, Orpheus, explains at the beginning of his account. The verses that follow these he puts forward as a screen, since he does not wish all men to understand. He indicates that in this one, quote, but when Zeus's mind conceived all the deeds, unquote. Column 26. Something something, quote, of mother, unquote, because mind is the mother of all other things, and of his own because she is good. And he also shows in the following words that the word means good. Quote, Hermes Diactoros, son of Maia, giver of goods, unquote. And he also shows it in this one. Quote, for 2 urns are placed on Zeus's threshold, of gifts such as he gives, of evils in the one, and the other one of goods, unquote. Those who do not understand the term think that it is of his own mother. But if he had wished to show the god, quote, wishing to unite in love with his own mother, unquote, he would have altered the letters and said, of his own mother. For thus it would have been of himself, and he would be her son. you for listening to Alexandria, a Hellenistic World podcast. I am always open to feedback or suggestions, so please leave a rating or review on your podcast app of choice. If you want to talk directly, you can find me on Twitter at Alexandria_pod, on Instagram as Alexandria.pod, or on Blue Sky and YouTube as simply at AlexandriaPod. You can find bibliography, more contact info, and other goodies on my website, alexandriapod.wordpress.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in Alexandria.